Do you feel the pressure to do things bigger and faster? Do you feel like you have to get your business or your company into profitability or bigger profitability immediately, if not yesterday? The pressure to perform is so intense today for women leaders and women entrepreneurs. And today's guest has some very wise advice about how to navigate that, what the science and psychology of change are, and how to get your life into alignment. Join me and Carissa Renninger for this fascinating conversation, the next Daring to Transcend podcast. So I'm excited today to welcome Carissa Renninger and I probably didn't pronounce that correctly, but she can correct me, Carissa Renninger, who is the founder and CEO of Silver Lining Limited. She started Silver Lining in 2005 and created the Silver Lining Action Plan, SLAP, a methodology that has helped over 10,000 small business owners in 14 countries set and hit their growth goals. She is the creator of the Thank You Small Business movement, and she also regularly writes, speaks, and advises on small business. She has worked with major organizations such as Google, the White House, Hewlett-Packard, Intuit, and others to bring more resources and support to small businesses. She and her work have been featured in places such as the New York Times, the Globe and Mail, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, TechCrunch, Forbes, and BizJournal. She is on a mission to help more small business owners make money doing what they love because she genuinely believes that we can change the economy one small business at a time. So welcome, Carissa. I am excited to have you here today.
I'm sorry that bio was so long. That was the number one thing I was thinking as you were reading it.
There was a lot of important things to say in that bio, though. But I think the punchline of that bio, though, is really change. And we were talking about that a little before we started the interview. But before we dive into that, talk about how you got there. Like, why did you start Silver Lining? What was the impetus?
It's a good question. I always say ignorance is bliss. I like to pretend I was 5 when I started it because it was 20 years ago almost, but I was 22. And my degree's in developmental psychology, behavior change science. I did a lot of work thinking about this reality of the circumstances that we maybe are born into or that form who we are, and then the degree to which we have agency over that, to nature versus nurture, all those questions. How do we be humans? Why do some humans face adversity and then they're inspired by it? And why do others get crushed by it? What is going on in this human experience? And originally, I thought I would apply those lessons I worked a lot with kids in the juvenile delinquent system, and also kids with developmental delays and different sort of realities. And when I finished my university education, my plan was to go get my PhD. And then I just had this moment where I was like, I am not an academic. I cannot be in school for 9 years. Like, I need to go do something. And so I moved to Toronto. I started a job in advertising of all things. And I realized that I was really good at business and I liked putting deals together and business done. I liked that. But I was so uninspired and completely unfulfilled working in advertising of all things. And so I had this fleeting moment, this idea, what if I helped small businesses who are often women, people from marginalized communities, people who have faced some sort of adversity, who are doing such good work, but it's really hard. Their kind of agency is often crippled by systems that don't work. What if I help small businesses grow their businesses? What if I could sort of somehow bring it all together? And so it started as a passing idea. And thankfully, I knew enough to know that I didn't know what I was talking about and I didn't really know how to solve that problem. And so I made a commitment to talk to one small business owner a day for 1 full year, and also to take any business any small business owner would give me. I would do any job if they would pay me so I could basically pay my mortgage while I was on this discovery journey. And so for the first year, I sort of barely got by financially, but I had all this breadth of experience that I was able to do. And I talked to 400 businesses. I had 400 coffees with small business owners. And out of those conversations built the SLAP methodology, which is really a response to them saying that the greatest challenges they had were that they felt like they never had enough time and money. They had a hard time figuring out how to find new customers. They were always under the gun and under pressure. And so I designed this methodology, which was really about trying to simplify the business challenges that they faced while also acknowledging the emotional and the systemic pressures they were under. And that methodology has stood the test of time. It's the same methodology I designed 19 years ago we still use today. The way that we've applied it has changed dramatically. We started as sort of a consulting model, then we shifted to a training model. And then about 10 years ago, I realized, wait, my background's in behavior change science. Like all I'm doing is training and education and consulting. None of these things are in alignment with my philosophy on how you actually change behavior. And so we designed a proprietary software system that small businesses around the world now use to apply our methodology to build growth plans for their small businesses, but then to also benefit from deeply tech-enabled and data-driven human support to help them benefit from behavior change science to help them actually implement their plans to hit their goals. So that's the very, very, very long version of a long, even longer story short. But the punchline is, I didn't know what I was doing. It was a thought that I pursued. Ignorance is bliss. Thank God I did not know how hard it would be.
But seriously, the thing I love most about your story, right, is that when you recognize at the beginning you didn't know anything and you spent that year talking to and working for, right? And I think the working for is really the key because you can learn a lot by talking to people. But until you're actually in the situation, it's really interesting to me because I always feel like that kind of intensive experience in a small business is such an important thing to have no matter where you go in your career. Like, for instance, I started out, my first job out of college, which I've talked to before, was working in retail, right? Now, I was working for a big company, but still, I was a store manager, which meant I had my own little kingdom, so to speak, where I was having to take care of everything, the hiring and firing, managing the books, taking care of the merchandise, dealing with the customers, all of those various things that go into making a business. Now, it wasn't the same as owning your own business, but still, I felt like that set a foundation for my career that then I took into my work and my work as an executive, because all of those things just help you understand, to your point, the pressures, the nuances, the customers, the big picture in a microcosm kind of way.
Exactly. I always, when people ask me, young people in particular, ask me for advice about what they should do with their career, and I always say, well, don't ask me because I didn't do any of the recommended versions of things. But what I would say is travel and take as many jobs as you can for a little while. Try everything. Like, just get as much perspective as possible, because you can sit and get an MBA, or you can sit and you can do some course, or you can build a skill. That's important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't build skills, but you can never replace just the authenticity of being in relationship with people, trying things, joining a board, trying to do something you've never done before and failing miserably. Like that type of experience will supersede a textbook and a little buttoned up job every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because most of the people I talk to, I talk to people who get their MBAs, right, go right from, college to an MBA or some sort of master's program, or people that go back and do it later in their 30s or 40s or even 50s. And generally, people that I talk to say they get so much more out of it by waiting, right? By having the experience and then by bringing those two things together. So it sounds like, so the next thing I want to ask you about, though, before we go off on too much of a tangent here, is you finally getting to the point, why did it take you so long to get to the point of applying your background, your psychology background to your thing? Is that a bad question to ask?
Good question. No, I think it's a very astute question. I always say to people, everyone's like, look what you built. And I'm like, yeah, but it's taken me 20 years. Maybe I'm not so smart after all. No, I think it's so interesting. I could talk for hours. It's a very good question. Layers and layers of thoughts on it. The short answer would be, I think it is so easy to assume that the way you see everyone else do things is the way you should do things.
Yes.
In the world of helping small businesses, and in the world of helping people accomplish goals, and in the world of helping people be better, the models we see are consulting models and training models. That is what we know. It's what we see. And so I assumed that that was the way to do it. And it really did take me, A, I failed dramatically multiple times. B, I didn't think it was working. I didn't see it helping the small businesses I was trying to help. And then C, time passed. I got more confident, older, wiser, I had more experience. But it really was I really did have this moment where I was like, wait, I have an expertise in behavior change science. And I am literally in the science of behavior change. It literally says, if you want to help someone modify their behavior to get to a different outcome, this is the formula for it. Like there's a literal formula for it. And I was not doing it. And it says consulting and training builds knowledge. It builds network. It's good, but it does not modify behavior. It does not result in a change of outcome. I know this for a fact. And yet it took me years of doing things a different way. And so again, this was a long answer again, but I think it goes back to, I was young. I had so many people trying to tell me what to do. I don't think I had the confidence to actually recognize that I had an answer that I actually had a legitimate point of view on. And also, it's just so compelling to do what you think must work because everyone else is doing it.
Yes.
As opposed to getting to the point of critical thinking where you say, wait, the failure rate of small businesses has been over 80% globally and systemically for decades and decades and decades. And yet every single person that tries to help small businesses launches consulting and training companies. It's not working because it's not actually changing anything. And so there's so much, I think, that I now challenge. Okay, I know that's the way it's always been done, but is it working? Is it the right way? Is it the best way? Could there be another way? And I think that, making that, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but taking that long to get to that clarity has been actually very helpful to me because it's trained my brain to be much more curious and challenging than I think it was before.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because so often we look at things and say, well, the most successful people in the world do it this way, so therefore we need to copy them and do it that way. And while there's nothing wrong with looking at that and evaluating what they're doing and saying, does this work for me or does this work in this situation? Or how do I need to adapt it? Or is it even applicable to me? But we so often, and we have people telling us this all the time, and you've got all the people out there, on LinkedIn, on wherever, all the experts saying, okay, here's the formula. If you follow this, it's going to work. But to step back and say, wait a minute. Yes, this is good information to your point. Yeah. Training and consulting, great information, good knowledge to have, but does it apply? And how does it apply? And we so often don't ask that question. So, I mean, you're not alone in not asking that question.
Yeah, it took me a long time to ask it. And I think to your point, one of the things that I believe so deeply now is that probably every deal, networking event, piece of information, book, expertise is actually helpful, but not always helpful to every individual. And so it's our job to be discerning enough, to your point, to absorb it, to see it, to research it, to be curious, to stay humble, to be looking for as much information as possible, but then to have the wisdom to say, okay, that's really interesting, but does not apply to my use case. Oh, I could learn so much from that. Like, let me bring it in to how I'm doing things and, and adjust. And so that balance, I think, is something that, will be a work in progress in me and I think all of us forever, but the humility to consume as much information as possible, to stay open, and then the wisdom to know what to take and integrate and what to reflect back out to the world and reject. That is hard.
No, it is. And it's so funny that you say that because I was just I was thinking, I have a good friend and a former coach of mine, unfortunately is no longer with us, but one of the things that that I talked to her about one time is sort of one of my superpowers was, synthesizing. I'm really good at taking a whole lot of information and synthesizing it in a way that, it I see all the different pieces and how things fit together. But even I can get stuck in that, okay, well, here's all this information, so it's got to be this answer versus saying, is it this answer from me? And as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, sometimes that's even the hardest thing, because to your point, you've got so many people telling you what to do, and you've got so much pressure to, perform to get the results you need. And of course, that's true regardless of what kind of business you're in. But it's so easy to say, well, somebody else followed this path, XYZ. So if I follow that, I'm going to get to where I need to go faster and easier, right? Isn't that the myth?
That's the myth. And unfortunately, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started, but this obsession with faster, bigger is so unhelpful. I've been talking about the culture of entrepreneurship for the last 5 years and how it's been hijacked by this venture-backed, tech entrepreneur culture. Venture capital, I'm going to be on a small soapbox for 1 minute. Venture capital is a very helpful financial product. In 0.01111% of business use cases, it was never meant to be the thing that we use for business in general. And so this obsession that we've given to a couple of primarily white men who are leading these very large, very well-funded tech companies, and then somehow assuming and subscribing on all business leaders that that's the standard of excellence is A, completely insane, B, untrue, because they're often miserable, divorced 10 times, struggling, pushed into decisions they don't really believe in for short-term results. But it's created this culture of it must be faster, it must be bigger. And if it's not faster and it's not bigger, it's not successful. But our economy is built on small businesses, small transactions, small choices, people making small moves. It is about everything actually is built on small. And in the world of behavior change, small actions add up to big change in the long term. It's not one big fast change. That doesn't work if you go to relapse. So in all of these things that we're being taught, we're being sold this terrible bill of goods. And unfortunately, we're buying it. But faster and bigger is not the way to create big change in ourselves, in our companies, in the economy. But we've built this, we covet these.
Well, we want instantaneous, we were talking about, we want instantaneous results. I mean, we live in the culture of immediate gratification, right?
Yes.
I even laugh because I love having these conversations and I love getting in these detailed conversations. But, my marketing team is always saying, well, don't go too long because people don't watch the whole thing.
Right.
It's like, right. But how do you get into the meat of things without really having a conversation? But it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing where we've got this, we don't take the time. Everything has to be in a soundbite.
Yes.
And I'm grossly simplifying things.
It's true. It's funny. My own staff were trying to get me to do every single meeting in 20 minutes. And I said to them, I get it if my only objective was productivity, but as the CEO of this business, I actually want to come up with good ideas. And I would also like to collaborate, which means we need time for discourse and debate and even conflict, and then enough space in the room to resolve that conflict before we go on our way and a half. I can't run this company in 20-minute meetings. I need space to actually think about things with you guys. And it's so, again, it's like,
and how did they respond to that?
But we're so busy. And I kept saying, and my belief is busy is a choice. I do more than most people I know. And I manage a decent amount of pressure these days. And I definitely feel that pressure. I feel the intensity of my life. It feels very relentless these last couple of years. And I know I'm not alone in that. But I wouldn't call myself busy, but I do more than most people I know, right? I mean, I think busy is a construct. It's a choice we make. I don't think we have to be busy.
Yeah, a lot of people we've talked about this people talk about this in other contexts. Busy is almost a badge of honor, right? Oh, I'm busy, right? It's just, but
I think it's a sign of being stuck. I think it's a sign of lack of prioritization. I think it's a sign of saying yes to the wrong things, right? And again, I get busy sometimes. I'm not judging. I do it too, but we all have something to be proud of. It's something to fix.
Agreed. Absolutely. I agree. So, with all the small business owners that you're talking to and working with, and your own leadership, right? The pressure that we're all under as leaders, as women leaders, this short-term versus long-term solutions, this immediate gratification, faster, bigger. How do you create room then in that context for the small changes that really, to your point, are what we need?
Yeah. So again, I know that I talk so long. I'm going to try and be brief, but I love this question. It's a sign of good questions. So what I believe very deeply in, it's branded. So I apologize for my little product placement here, but we call it the silver standard, where I really believe that the way forward for business owners, especially women, is where we figure out how to get our wellness, body and mind, our profit, and the justice and impact we want to create in the world into alignment. So it's not that we've got a yoga guru over there and a business coach over there and an activism group we're part of over there. And we're like fighting and tugging between which gets our priority and we sacrifice one for the other. But I think balance is impossible. I think we need to give up the concept of work-life balance. It's not happening. Get over it. It's not as idea.
But no, I always talk about, I like the work-life integration, right? Much better. And I think that's where you're going with integration and alignment.
Yeah, and alignment, because when I think about my body and my mind, it is deeply aligned, its health and wellness, to being able to be a good CEO. Being a good, skilled CEO that is healthy and of sound mind allows me to make better decisions. I can build a more profitable business. As my wellness and my money grow, I can have more influence. I can make choices about how I run my company and run my life that can create real systemic change in the world. But if I was dividing those three things as three very different objectives that seemed even like they were in competition with each other, I would be fighting for work-life balance. It's impossible. But when I actually believe that the choices I'm making align against all of it. So to go to your question, I think that the first step is alignment. I don't think we can make the right small choices until we're in alignment. When we're in alignment, then we teach our small businesses, every action you take is the expenditure of $1, a minute, or a morsel of your energy. And so then it actually comes down to focus and discipline, which is so unsexy and no one wants to talk about it. It's not exciting at all. But it's the truth. We see it in all of our data. Charisma is not what builds great leaders. It's actually focus and discipline. And so when you have an aligned vision for your life, when you set goals for your wellness, your profit, and your impact, when those goals are in alignment and clear and stated, it actually becomes ridiculously easy to be able to know, oh, that's a good use of my time and money and energy, or that's a bad use of my time and money and energy. And so every call you choose to take, the networking event you do or don't go to, the school drop-off you volunteer to do or not, the muffins you decide to make for your in-laws or not, all those choices actually come into clarity. And it becomes very straightforward to know exactly where to say yes and exactly where to say no. And it's in every single one of those tiny choices that you build a life that add up to an aligned, productive life or a scattered, hectic, unfulfilling life.
I love that. Yeah, that you did such a beautiful job of summing that up, because that's absolutely also what I believe, and the integration of those things. And so many women leaders, whether they're entrepreneurs, small business owners, or executives like yourself, they get caught up in that, to your point, scattered and unfulfilled place.
Yes.
And it is because they're out of alignment. And, I know when I work with my coaching clients, to get them into, alignment with what they really want and what's really important to them, which a lot of women don't even take the time to figure that out. Because we're told not to, but that's a whole other soapbox that I will not go on. I will lay
I'm with you on that all the way.
That's almost soapbox that I will not go off on right now, because we are really coming to the end of our time, because I want this to be an impactful conversation. And I think where you left at as far as the alignment thing is just so beautiful and juicy and so important, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a small business owner or whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It doesn't matter. Those things are just so critical. And it's so beautiful to me that you've brought that behavioral change way back when from your college days, with all the insight and information that you gathered about small businesses over the years, and put those two things together in just a beautiful, integrated, aligned way. So I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so funny. We tell our small businesses all the time, business is simple, but being a human is incredibly complicated. And so it takes real good, consistent self-awareness, outside inputs, accountability, right? All of the things that we have in SLAP to be able to understand, okay, this is a clear business decision. And if you've got a good plan, it's an easy decision. And this is where your humanness is causing an emotional override. That needs to be acknowledged and addressed. We're not trying to ignore it. But let's let the two live side by side, and let's not confuse them. And for so many small business owners, women in particular, that overlap, that messy integration of who they are versus their business, and the inability to separate makes it really hard to make good choices. And so and to your point, we're so deeply programmed to take on responsibility and to take on guilt and shame and all the things that happen and all the issues that we all know are true. And so it makes so much sense. But I think we have a real opportunity as women to try to know it and understand it, step outside of it, to give ourselves the biggest possible chance of success.
I love that. Yes. Amen.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I don't. There's really nothing more to say after that, because that just is just the perfect punchline. It's so true. We have so much to offer. When we get in alignment and clear and are prioritizing things and not letting ourselves get pulled in 50 million different directions, which is so easy for us to do because everyone expects us to do everything for them.
Yes. And then we wonder why we get paid less. We're on less, executive positions. We get less funding. It's not our fault. It's a systemic issue that we have been stuck in. Yeah, but it also makes all the sense in the world, right? I mean, if you think about the male journey, which is typically quite narrow in the terms of the number of responsibilities they bear, they have a natural focus and discipline on business outcome. They're not worried about wellness of family and other caretaking, even impact in many instances, not to be too generalistic. And so it's worked for them, right? Again, even our inequality is very logical if you let it be. It makes all the sense in the world, which means we can change it. That's the hopeful part. When it's very logical, that means there's a logical solution to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of that is changing with the younger generations. I mean, I think the young people in their teens and 20s and even in their early 30s have had a different experience of some of that.
I think that's true.
They're starting to. And so it does take generations, again, to go back to our, conversation about immediate gratification. These kinds of societal changes, societal systems that have been in place for hundreds, if not thousands of years, they're not going to change like that.
Exactly. I always say I'm like a tortured soul that's both an idealist and a realist. So I see an ideal future and I fight for it every minute of my life and I will not relent. And then I'm a realist and I say, well, yeah, but this is where we are and it's going to take lifetimes of work to get to the ideal. But I think if we can hold both, right? Like,
absolutely.
I see the ideal and I am fighting for it with every choice I make. I will not give up. I will not relent. And I am realistic that it's not going to happen by next quarter. And so I don't have to live in anxiety and frustration and stress every minute of my life. I can see where I'm going and I acknowledge how long it'll take, but fight every day for it. Like, if we can hold both of those things, we can be fierce in our fight for justice and equality. We can not be angry and mad all the time, although I'm angry and mad a lot, to be fair. I'm frustrated a lot about it, but if we can hold both somehow, right? I mean, that's I struggle with it, but I think that's our mandate.
Well, and it's accepting sort of the non, going into a non-dual space. It's not an either or thing.
Exactly.
And to get out of the judgment of all of it. Really, that's how you turn the anger off, right? Is to get out of the judgment of it, accept it, to your point, continue to move in the right direction, continue to take all those small little actions that get us into the right direction, and that get us to that change, but that we don't, but don't judge the reality, because the reality is the reality.
Exactly. I agree. 1,000%.
So anyway, Carissa, this has been just a basic conversation. I have a feeling you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours, but we need to wrap this up today. So I think you've given such great insight into, leadership in general, but also for small businesses. So if there are small business owners that want to get in touch with you and learn more about your system or how you can support them, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so simple. Go to slapcenter.com, SLAPCENTER.com. Easy. There's a little button that says Get Started. You can do quite a bit of building your SLAP for free, and then you can download it, and then eventually you'll arrive at a paywall and you'll be able to decide if it's something you want to pursue or not. But there's a huge amount of value you can have for free. So go to slapcenter.com. There's buttons to talk to our staff. We've got one of the most incredible teams of humans I've ever met in my entire life. You could talk to us. You could email us. You could start your SLAP. You can do anything you want. No strings attached.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Carissa. I really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dare to Transcend podcast. If you would like to get in touch with me and talk to me about my books, my coaching work, or some of the new services that I'm offering now for helping women tell their stories, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn or at daringtotranscend.com. See you next week.